Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you are doing well. Welcome into the Wednesday edition of my YouTube channel where I'm going to be going through my starts and sits for week one in fantasy football. I'm going to go ahead and get into this. You already know what you can expect. I'm going to give you my starts and my sits for the quarterback position, the running back position, the wide receiver position, and the tight end position. Now, for those that have maybe followed my fantasy coverage over the last few seasons, you've heard me give these takes before. As a reminder, for the first month of the season, I don't really like to reference numbers or anything like that, just because I don't think we have enough of a sample size to gauge how defenses are defending in terms of fantasy against the quarterback position, against the running back position, wide receiver, and tight end. Once we get to about week 5, that's when we got our first, I guess you could say, good gauge on how the defenses are defending each position. Even then, it's still kind of somewhat skewed, but that's when you can expect to hear me reference more numbers and how defenses are defending each of these players. So, with that being said, this episode, all the way through week 4, it is going to be more of my gut feeling and how I feel about that specific player or players for this given week. But let's go ahead and dive into the quarterbacks, starting with my starts. I'll go ahead and start there. I'm giving my start for one of my starts to Trevor Lawrence. I think he's got a great matchup this week against the Texans. The Texans are going to have one of the worst defenses this year. They have one of the worst secondaries in the league. They just traded Bradley Roby to the New Orleans Saints, who was their best corner, who was even suspended for this game, so he wasn't even going to play. So he's no longer on the roster, and they really don't have much out there to defend the Jaguars' passing attack. The Jaguars have a nice little trio between DJ Chark, Marvin Jones Jr., and Laviska Shenault. I think this has a great opportunity to set up Trevor Lawrence for a great first game in the NFL, where I could see him putting up 250 plus passing yards, maybe reaching that 300 yard level and getting 2 to 3 touchdowns on the day. I do think he's going to torch the Texans secondary in his debut in the NFL. My second start of the week is Sam Darnold. You guys are going to be kind of surprised if you paid attention to my Panthers video, if you paid attention to my season prediction video, which, by the way, before the season starts, go check out both of those if you haven't yet. But I'm not a big Sam Darnold fan. I'm just not. But for this week, yeah, maybe I am. Sam Darnold's got a great matchup against the New York Jets, so he's got a revenge game factor in there. You know he's going to want to ball out against his former team. And on top of that, speaking of terrible secondaries, the Jets have an awful secondary. They have a very inexperienced group in that in the cornerback group. Sam Darnold's got a nice little trio of wide receivers between Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Terrace Marshall that he can spread the ball to. So I think he's going to have a good game, and he could be a sneaky fantasy play. Now I will mention these starts and sits. Some of these might be for more deeper leagues in terms of a guy like maybe Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, maybe like a super flex league. But these are also guys, whenever I give out my starts and sits, I think you can play these in daily fantasy, on DraftKings or FanDuel or where Underdog, wherever you play daily fantasy football every week. So keep that in mind when I give these out every Wednesday. My sit for the quarterback position, as you can see, Ben Roethlisberger against the Bills. I'm not liking the matchup. I'm just going to be completely honest. I definitely think there's definitely some type of floor to Big Ben because he's got a great set of wide receivers that he can spread the ball to, but I don't like what's going on in front of him with that offensive line right now. I think the Bills significantly improved their defensive line, so I think they're going to be able to create pressure on Big Ben. If they're able to create pressure, that's going to force him to get the ball out of his hands at a lot faster rate. That's not going to lead to a lot of yards, and that could potentially lead to mistakes by Big Ben where maybe the Bills can get their hands on interceptions. So I don't know. I'm just not seeing a great performance out of Big Ben. I would look elsewhere. I would roll a Sam Darnold or a Trevor Lawrence over Big Ben this week. My other sit for the week is, if anybody's thinking about playing it, it's Jameis Winston. I'm not going to jump on board with him all of a sudden becoming a superstar quarterback for the Saints in opening game against the Packers, which happens to be in Jacksonville. It's not the Saints' home stadium. It's not going to be their traditional home game they have to play. So I think that already is going to mess with his psyche a little bit. And then on top of that, if you guys listened to my top 5 streamable defenses last night that I posted, please go check that out if you haven't. I think the Packers could be a potentially good streaming defense. I think the Packers could be a pretty decent defense this year. So I think there's going to be some struggles with Jameis. And then also, we still don't know how much Taysom Hill is going to be used when when the offense is on the field, especially when they get closer to the red zone. If they're willing to pull out a Drew Brees for Taysom Hill, I can promise you they're going to be willing to pull out a Jameis Winston for a Taysom Hill. So if you're a fantasy football owner of Winston, I would totally avoid playing him. I just don't think the matchup's right, and you just want to see how this situation is going to unfold in week 1 between him and Taysom. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the running back starts and sits. My running back starts, I'm going to go with Mike Davis against the Eagles. My gut feeling on this is, listen, Mike Davis is probably not the sexiest RB1 in the league. Let's be honest. But the fact is, he's going to dominate the touches out of the backfield. They paid him a lot of money. And as of right now, I mean, I know they brought in Wayne Gallman last week, but there's nobody who's going to threat to his touches. But you know for sure in week 1, he's going to dominate the role. He's going to have a significant, he's going to play a significant part in the team's game plan against the Eagles. So I just got to get him in my lineup. That's the way I view him. I own Mike Davis because, the biggest fear with him is maybe he's not going to be a great season-long play. Maybe he dies off halfway through the season. He's not efficient with his touches. Maybe another running back starts to cut in to his touches. There is always that fear with Mike Davis. That's how it always has been with his career. So if you have him, play him now before it gets too late. My other start of the week is Gus Edwards. Same thing. He's going against the Raiders too. If we remember last year, the Raiders, I don't like to point too much to last year's teams because those teams do change over the offseason. So I try not to reference that too much in terms of my fantasy, how I view it. But the fact is, though, is the Raiders got carved up on the ground game. So if they did not improve that over the course of the preseason and training camp, it's possible that could continue on Monday night. Gus is also going to dominate the touches out of the backfield. Now, Tyson Williams, as I mentioned in my waiver wire ad last night, he's going to probably work himself into a role. But the fact is Gus has been there for 3 years. He knows the offense. He's going to dominate the touches. And just in case maybe they were to add, I know they added Le'Veon Bell. I don't think that's much of a threat to Gus Edwards. But maybe if they add like a Latavius Murray or anybody else, or maybe Tyson Williams does indeed, outperform where he is at on the depth chart, and maybe they do feel like they're comfortable splitting those touches. So just like Mike Davis, play Gus Edwards now while things are hot with him in terms of having a big part in their team's game plan. My sit, both of these actually, as you can see, are two different. They're a pair of running backs. A little running back by committee, and they're both situations that I got to see how they play out. That's just the fact. I don't trust either of them in week 1, and not only I don't trust either of them in week 1, they're going against very stout rushing defenses. So starting with Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel, who knows who's gonna? I mean, I think Anderson I think that he is the opening snap, but we don't. He's gonna take the opening snaps with the first team, but we don't know how much Sony Michel is going to get worked in the offense. They might end up splitting 50-50, and then on top of that, if they're splitting 50-50, they're going against a very stout defensive front 7 against the Bears. That's something I'm not trying to mess with. I mean, I could see both those guys getting around 50 yards, and you're just hoping they get a touchdown. It's going to be a headache, I believe, if you play one of those guys in your lineup. My other sit, Chase Edmonds and James Conner. Now, it sounds like Chase Edmonds, he's going to be the lead back, but we don't know how much James Conner is going to factor into that, especially when the team gets closer to the red zone. Add in the fact this is going to be a pass-heavy offense that is going to run a lot of 3 to 4 wide receiver sets. So we don't know how much he's going to be involved in the passing attack. And on top of that, they're facing a very good front 7 from the Tennessee Titans. So I don't see much action happening out of the backfield in Carolina. As a matter of fact, they might want to keep one of them in there to help with the pass protection for Kyler and let the wide receivers do work in the air attack. So, yeah, I'm avoiding that situation as well. For the Darrell Henderson and the Sony Michel thing, and with Chase Edmonds and the James Conner thing. I just want no part of it in week one. I want to see how exactly their roles are going to play out in live game action, and then I will go from there in week two. Now, moving on to my wide receiver starts and sits. My first wide receiver start, just continuing from my Sam Darnold take, is the Jets don't have great cornerbacks. So if you have DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson, play them this week. It's going to be worth it, especially Robbie Anderson. That's his former team in the Jets. Him and Sam Darnold used to play for the Jets, so I'm sure the both of them are going to want to not only connect often, but probably at least try to connect on one touchdown, right? So I think Robbie Anderson's a good play. DJ Moore's going to get plenty of touches as well. And I think if you got Terrace Marshall, he might be a sneaky play out of the slot position this week, just because I think the Jets are going to struggle heavily to stop the pass this year, and I think both those players could end up reaching a close to 100 yards, maybe even both of them get a touchdown. And like I said, maybe in DFS or something like that, Terrace Marshall might be a sneaky play this week. My other start too, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. The Bengals lost William Jackson this past offseason, and then Trey Waynes, their other cornerback, has already been ruled out. So we already know that they're going to be down one of their starters this week. So I'm going to roll out Justin Jefferson. I mean, you're probably already rolling out Justin Jefferson because of his draft capital, but a guy like Adam Thielen, I'm playing him as well. I think he's going to have a great matchup. I think they're going to be able to pick apart the secondary as they look to build upon what the Vikings did last year with that passing attack. And I could definitely see both those guys getting close to 100 yards each on the game during the game. My sit of the week, both of these guys are definitely matchup based. Kenny Golladay against the Broncos. The Broncos have one of the best defenses in the league, and they have one of the, if not the best, secondary in the league. They have a number of guys that they could stick on Kenny. Add on the fact that Kenny's in a loaded wide receiver room, so even though he did get all that money, there's a potential that the targets are going to be spread around, especially if he's dealing with sticky coverage from one of the Broncos cornerbacks, like if Patrick Surtain's on him, for example. So that's just a situation where if I can avoid and leave Kenny Golladay on my bench, I would do that if I were you, just because I don't like that matchup. And on top of that, we got to see who Daniel Jones is this year. He doesn't have the greatest offensive line in front of him right now, and that Broncos defense has Bradley Chubb and Von Miller who are going to attack him. So I think it's going to be a volatile day for Kenny Golladay. Did not mean to do that, by the way. But yeah, my other sit, though, Allen Robinson against the Rams. I understand if you got to play Allen Robinson, you probably selected him pretty high. So this is maybe one of my lowered expectations sits of the week, if you do indeed play him. But the Rams, they're the best defense last year. So they're going against a very stout defense with Aaron Donald. And guess who the Bears have right now? They have basically no offensive line. Their entire offensive line unit already wasn't that great, and their first round left tackle, or was he second round maybe? I forgot. Tevin Jenkins is out. So the offensive line is going to struggle to protect. Guess who's throwing the ball? Andy Dalton. Well, Andy Dalton does not make me believe that he can overcome a Rams defense, especially when that Rams defense has a Jalen Ramsey. Guess what? Jalen Ramsey, more times than not, is probably going to stick on Allen Robinson, because there's, outside of maybe Darnell Mooney, not much to scare him in that wide receiver room. So the fact that Jalen Ramsey is probably going to shadow Allen Robinson more times than not, you got a poor offensive line, and you got Andy Dalton throwing the ball. Just lower your expectations if you play him, but I would sit him if you could. Moving on to my tight end starts and sits of the week. My start of the week is Mike Gesicki against the Patriots. I just think that with the Will Fuller's not suspended for the first 2 or 3 games, if I remember that right. I know he's for sure out this week. So they're missing one of their points in the passing attack. So I think Mike Gesicki is going to be that security blanket for Tua in this opening matchup. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. Their backup tight end, Adam Shaheen, is been placed on the COVID list, so he's out for like 10 days. So he's not playing this week. So they're down one of their tight ends. So I think he's going to get a lot of targets. And I could see him getting, 6-7 receptions for like 50, 60 yards and a touchdown, if not more yards than that. My other start of the week, this is kind of a sneaky guess play for me. This is definitely a gut feeling. But it's Jared Cook against the football team. There was, I think, I pointed this out in my football team preview video. Go check it out if you haven't. But the one weak point of this football team's defense, you could point to the linebacker group. Now, it's going to be a lot better with Jamin Davis, but this is Jamin Davis's first game. John Bostic struggles in coverage. Cole Holcomb's, he's a very solid linebacker, but I think there's going to be ways that Jared Cook can find open zones, open holes in this defense, and I think that he can carve them up. I think he can get about 5 catches. He's going to be a touchdown-dependent tight end like he was with the Saints, but I think if there were a week to play Jared Cook, I think it's at least week 1, and then you go from there with him. Now, my sits of the week, again, the tight ends are definitely more of gut feels for me, but Robert Tonyan against the Saints, I'm not sure if I'm buying into last year if that was not I want to call it a fluke season, but him getting that many touchdowns, that's just not going to probably repeat itself. They brought in Randall Cobb. They brought in Amari Rodgers. They still got MVS. They still got Alan Lazard. They have a number of guys to spread the ball to as secondary pieces to, guess what, Davante Adams, who is going to see a lot of targets himself. So I'm not willing to line up Robert Tonyan in my opening day lineup because I could just see him laying a dud, even with a great day from Aaron Rodgers on the Sunday. My other sit of the week, this is just kind of like the running backs sits. This is just a situation I want to see play out. If you got Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry, I would maybe consider somebody else if you could. Now, I obviously understand too, there's a good chance one of them go off this weekend. But what if it's the wrong one? That's my biggest concern, right? We don't know how exactly their roles are going to line up. Now, there's a possibility these guys are the second edition of Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, and they both produce. And that's definitely plausible. But I want to see it happen before I feel like I can trust that happening inside my lineup. So if you got Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith, I would just consider playing somebody else while you see this situation play out, at least in week 1, and then go from there. But yeah, those are my starts and sits for week 1 in fantasy for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. Again, I didn't get any, but if anybody ever has any questions, fantasy related or NFL related, please hit up my comment section of this video. I will answer it in my next video. I am going to be doing my week 1 regular season, like regular type of preview, non-fantasy football type of preview this weekend. That will either come out Friday nights or Saturday mornings whenever I can get to it outside of my job. But other than that, you can expect my starts and sits every Wednesday. You can expect my waiver wire ads and my streamable defenses every Tuesday nights. Now, if anything does come up, if I have any type of event I need to attend, I would try to keep people updated as much as possible. Follow me on Twitter at Cody Talks NFL, just so you can get any type of updates from me if anything were to happen and my videos needed to be either postponed for a later time. Other than that, the Prospect Encyclopedia, I'm always going to plug that. Please go check that out if you haven't. Go to prospectencyclopedia.com. You can check out the Bucks section for free, which I wrote. You can order an individual team PDF for $1, or just get the whole thing for $15. Why spend $1 on one team when you get 32 teams for $15? Again, what that is, every team has a top 22 player list. Guys from the last 3 draft classes that have less than 12 regular season starts. We wrote a report up on them for the upcoming season. So it's a way you can know more about your team on game days. They range guys from future superstars to core special teamers. But again, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, as always, hit that like button. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. And then other than that, you enjoy the rest of your day or night whenever you are watching this. And I'll see you guys when I do my week 1 preview this weekend. See you guys.